All right, guys. Thank you very much. And we are about InfosecTrain. We were established in 2016, and we have wide range of training programs. So in cybersecurity and information technology in specific, and we have trainers, highly trained professionals, in order to deliver the trainings. And we have been doing a great so far. We have served 20 plus countries, and we have trainers from diverse backgrounds in cybersecurity who come with numerous years of experience, and we have many partners as well. We have more courses. We keep on bringing courses on almost quarterly basis. Now, today, what we'll be looking at is threat hunting in particular. Uh, what exactly is threat hunting? How do we get started? And what is the necessity of threat hunting in general? And how do me as an individual get started in the industry? How do I? What are the job roles available? Let's say if I'm a candidate who is interested in telecommunication, is is there a requirement for threat hunting? I will discuss that as well, right? So, threat hunting is required in numerous domains. We shall see which domains threat hunting professionals are required and how do we get started. All right. Now, to begin with, let's start from scratch. What exactly is threat hunting? Now, threat hunting is a terminology or analogy, I would say, which is used to identify the threats to my organization or to me as an individual, also, right? Now, threat hunting is a generic term. In our case, we are looking at the we are looking at cyber security threat hunting. Okay. For example, the cops go out, the policemen go out and start looking for threat, possible threats to the community, possible threats to uh, certain aspects of the community. Okay, let's say we have CID, right? Crime Investigation Department. What they do is they go out and look for people who are a threat to, let's say, uh, threat to stealing something, or threat to a building, or threat to a certain aspect, or I would say that there is a security guard always standing at the gate of your building in order to protect, in order to stay awake and keep the threats away from your building. Okay, this is the basic definition, I would say, of protecting the threat. Now, even before I go ahead and protect a threat, right, how do I know what is a threat? Is there a threat in my environment? How do I find out? So what happens is, organization, will my employees be phished? Will my computers be infected with virus? Will there be an privilege escalation on my computer, right? On my network. So how do I identify these threats? What steps should I go through, right? We'll see the steps. How do we go ahead and do it, and what are the methodologies? Now, if you see the methods on the slide deck, right? Now, there are two types of threat hunting: internal threat hunting and external threat hunting, right? So the basic difference between internal and external is, internal threat hunting is done on the network which I have. Let's say I have a network of 20,000 computers. I try looking, is there any possibility of someone escalating the privileges? Is there any possibility that someone is copying my data out? Data loss prevention mechanism is incorporated. Is there any possibility that my systems are being DDoSed or DOSed, for that matter, right? So this is the, when I'm searching for possibilities, right? So I'm hunting the threat. For example, let's say, is there a ransomware? I'm hunting for this threat in my environment. Now, there are two types of hunting. Okay, either you do it reactively or proactively. A simple definition of reactive and proactive threat hunting is, you do reactive threat hunting when you know that you are infected, when you are attacked. For example, let's say your computers are down because of DDoS. Now you try to look, how did DDoS happen? Which vulnerability or which weakness caused this threat of DOS or DDoS? Okay, This is a reactive threat hunting. Now, in on the proactive side, what you do is, instead of instead of waiting until the incident happens, you go ahead and start doing it. Will my network be infected? Will my network be DDoSed? Will my computers be infected with virus? Is there any possibility of data leakage? If yes, how? Right? Is there someone who is copying data? If yes, how? What are the possibilities? Now, when you look for possibilities, right? So possibility hunting and possibilities, right? They go in hand. You try to look for, or you try to hunt down, or you try to search the possibilities of certain threats. This is the proactive and reactive threat hunting, which is done inside the environment. Now, there is something called as uh, there is a category of threat hunting which is outside the environment, outside your network. Third party systems collab with external sources. Now, when you hunt for threats to your organization or your to your network outside the perimeter or outside the network, right? You basically incorporate open source intelligence or threat intelligence programs in order to see, is there any threat to certain types of industries or to your organization in specific. For example, let's say Tesla is an amazing company. Everybody knows Tesla. Tesla has more threat, not only inside, outside as well. Tesla might have a rogue employee inside. Okay, Tesla's computers might be infected. Since Tesla is well known, people might try to DDoS from outside, right? So we have to go and try hunting down the threats. Now, as one of the attendees said, attack campaigns. Now, when you look for attack campaigns on dark web, try to know what are the plans if they are planning to do anything to my organization. Now, this is where I go ahead and do threat hunting outside the environment, searching for dark web. Threat intelligence comes into picture as well at that point of time, right? And methodologies. Okay, I know these are the threats I have to look for, but how do I look? Where do I look? What procedures should I incorporate in order to do the threat hunting, or yeah, threat hunting, right? Now, we have analytics driven, situational awareness driven, and intelligence driven. Now, analytics driven comes majorly under the proactive stage. For example, we have UEABA, okay, UEABA, user analytics behavior, user activity behavior analytics. Okay, I forgot the abbreviation, but yeah. So what happens is, you monitor certain patterns, and if something goes beyond the pattern, if something is out of order, then you start looking more into it. You say, boss, why did this happen? How did this happen? It shouldn't have happened. For example, let's say, uh, for example, we have Krishna in the chat box here. Now, Krishna logs in at 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 p.m. Okay, Krishna works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. All of a sudden, we see a login from Krishna at 3 a.m. in the midnight, early morning. Now, the security team gets a little bit like, how? Why? Krishna is not supposed to log in. Krishna has been logging in uh, 8 a.m. At 8 a.m. since 2 years. Out of nowhere, Krishna logs in at 3 a.m. Why? From where did Krishna log in? Which device did Krishna use? Did Krishna log in from office network, or did he log in through the VPN servers? So you start looking, right? So Krishna logging in at 3 a.m. was a threat. How did it happen? When did it happen? Why did Krishna log in? All these are the questions you have to ask in order to understand, is it a threat or something normal procedure? Krishna had to log in at 3 a.m. Okay. Now you monitor certain things, and you incorporate many, for example, you incorporate machine learning in order to monitor your activities of the network, right? For example, you have, let's say, infosectrain.com is a website. InfosecTrain usually receives standard traffic from India IP addresses. All of a sudden, InfosecTrain servers start receiving traffic from, let's say, Germany, large number of requests. Then the team at InfosecTrain goes ahead and analyzes the traffic, analyzes the pattern. They incorporate machine learning in order to see what is the duration, the connections are coming in, what is the packet reach count, all these things. Next, we have situational awareness driven. If you see here, right, as I told earlier, what threat is to my organization. Let's say I work with a bank. Now, bank will not care about the threats which are solely concentrated towards the attack campaigns, which are concentrated towards health industry, right? Now, I go ahead and search for threats which are known to be occurring only in banking industry. I see. Who here knows the Iran nuclear power plant hack? What is the name of the virus which caused chaos to Iran nuclear power plant? Now, Stuxnet was like it almost it was about to cause a lot of chaos and havoc. People found it out, right? Stuxnet worm. Now, for example, ICS or industrial control systems has this vulnerability which Stuxnet could exploit. Do you think, is it a good idea if I concentrate too much on finding a Stuxnet worm or virus in a banking server? Because I have to concentrate, there is limited energy I have to put in, and I have to put in energy at the right duration. The whole idea is I wanted to prove this explain this methodology of situational awareness driven. I should know what threats to look for and where do I look for. Next, we have the crown jewel analysis. Okay, in crown jewel analysis, what happens is i I look for I concentrate more and more on, let's say, active directory, my SQL server, my banking server, all these things, right? So these are the methodologies. And then we have intelligence driven. This is basically on the resources collected about the campaigns, about certain threats to certain industries, or maybe to my organization as well. Okay, these are a couple of definitions. And moving ahead, we have steps. Okay, I know I have defined these are the threats I have to look for, and this is the threat to my organization or my network. How do I go ahead and do it? How do I actually do the threat hunting? That's where this we have many threat hunting maturity models, a framework per se, which will help us understand how do we go, how do we plan. Now, without planning, nothing can be achieved, right? The same way, we have a threat hunting model. This is by an organization called as Squirrel. These guys have laid out these steps. Other organizations have there is no set standard for threat hunting per se, but almost every organization who comes up with a framework, they almost fall in this category which we have here, right? So first of all, you create hypothesis. In our example, when I told Krishna logging in at 3 a.m., right? Why is Krishna logging in? Is Krishna's account compromised? Is Krishna has Krishna given his password to somebody else? Right? You assume that there is a threat. You assume that something has already gone wrong. You assume that this could have gone wrong. That's why it is. So you create a hypothesis, and then you go ahead and search via tools and look for certain techniques. Let's say Abdul Mateen logs in at 3 a.m. In the midnight, and I'm supposed to log in at 8 to 6, right? Now, if I log in at 3 a.m., my security team goes ahead and looks. Okay, Abdul Mateen has logged in at 3 a.m. Probably his account is compromised. Okay, then they go and look for certain activities of me. For example, if they incorporate investigate my activity, they might use active directory logs. What has what is the history of Abdul Mateen logging in? Okay, in our case, the technique is, in order to go and look for the logs, what tools they are using. Let's say they are using a security incident and event management tool, a SIM tool, to pull all the logs and do analysis. Okay, next, if everything is okay, I have been logging in on time at X and Y time, and out of nowhere there is a new login pattern, 3 a.m. They go back, check history. Abdul Mateen had logged in 20 days before. Again, he had logged in at 3 a.m. Why? Then they go ahead and analyze. Abdul Mateen has been logging in at 3 a.m. from past 20, from past 3 months. For every 20 days, Abdul Mateen has been logging in at 3 a.m. in the morning. What happened? Let's talk to him. Abdul Mateen says, I don't know. I have never logged in. Now there's a new hypothesis here again in the loop. Okay, it means that his account is compromised. How was it? How was his account compromised? Did he click on any phishing link? Did he visit any malicious website on his computer? So you keep on doing this, and ultimately you reach to a point where you see that, okay, this is the threat which happened, and these are the actions we have to take care of. Okay, and most importantly, threat hunting is done in order to look for the tactics, techniques, and procedures of adversaries. Now, there's an amazing individual in the industry, cybersecurity industry, called as David Bianco. Now, the pyramid of pain, the logic is extremely simple. The amount of effort required by an adversary in order to change their methodologies of attack. Okay, what I'm saying is, let's say, how many people know virustotal.com here? Presumably most of the people know a virus.com here. Virustotal.com, sorry. If you want to know if a certain file is malicious or something, what you do is you take the hash of the file and put it in a search in virustotal.com. It will tell you, is this hash of a malicious file or not. Okay, let's say I have name.txt. If I generate a hash of this file and search on virustotal.com, virustotal will tell me if this particular file is a malicious one. Is it a virus file? Okay, now if I change a single dot, now if a single dot, or if you add a single space in a file, what will happen is the entire hash of the file changes. Now imagine if an attacker has a virus file which is in your environment, and you are you search for hashes of those particular files. Now if a small if a small aspect or a bit changes in a file, the entire hash changes of the file. So it is easy for the attackers to change the virus file by adding or deleting certain characters. The entire hash changes. Okay, now I keep monitoring the hashes. If a hash of a file changes, gone. I can no more monitor the file, no more look for that particular threat. Next, we have IP addresses. Let's say if you visit a site called as abuseip.db, abuseipdb website, it has list thousands of IP addresses which are known to be malicious, which are known to perform malicious activities. These servers, okay, as I was saying, now there are bunch of IP addresses on a website called as, for example, there's a website abuseipdb.com, I think, or ch. This website will give you all the IP addresses which are known to be bad. Now, let's say 1.2.3.4 is a bad IP address, and we are monitoring 1.2.3.4. What if the attacker changes all his malicious code from 1234 to 1235? I'm looking at 1234. He has already changed and he's attacking me from some other angle, right? It was easy for him. It is not a big deal. He'll spend some dollars, spend some money, and he will change his source IP address of attacking, right? Now it is quite difficult for him, not as easy as changing the hash, changing the characters in the hash file, which will indicate malicious hash. Then moving ahead, the domain names. For example, let's say there is a website called as fbx.com, which will redirect you to malicious facebook.com, Facebook page, right, where they do phishing, all these attempts. Now if we find out that this is a malicious website, and I we change the we start monitoring fbx.com, the attacker might change his phishing page from fbx to fby.com, right? It is quite difficult. Next, moving ahead, we have the network and host artifacts. For example, the code is hosted on aws, the malicious code is hosted on aws. Okay, We found out that there's a malicious AWS host which is giving out malware to the environment. We start looking for all these aspects. Now they can change the code from that particular AWS instance to some other. It is little bit difficult, but not too difficult. Okay. Now, as the if you see in the pyramid, right, as the level goes up, the hardship of the attacker to now as the levels go up in the pyramid, the pain of the attacker increases. Now at a certain point, for example, let's say I am monitoring nmap. Everybody knows nmap. Everybody knows here that nmap is a tool used to do network scanning. Okay. If i find if i stop uh, if I start defending all the connections coming from nmap tool, the attacker will have to write a new program or use. Now if the attacker has to change the entire tool, right, if he has to scan your network from something else, as a using some other tool, you will have to write a tool, you'll have to find a new tool. It is extremely difficult to write a new tool. Okay. You see, right, as the pyramid goes up, the pain of the attacker increases. Now, next, at the top of the pyramid, we have something called as TTPs: tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now, how do they attack something? How do they execute certain activity is defined by the tactics. Right? What activities they use in order to execute certain goal. For example, if they have to fish an employee, will they use email as a phishing mode or website as a phishing mode is the tactic part. If they are using phishing as email, that is the technique. What is the procedure? Will they send out an email or will they make the user click by mistake or something? Okay. Now these are the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now instead of looking for a hash value, if I'm looking for a hash value, if I'm hunting for a hash value, if the attacker changes his file, the hash changes. I'm no more looking for it. If the source IP address of the code is changed, I'm not monitoring. I'm not looking for the right information. But if I'm looking how they are acting, what are the steps they take in order to in order to infect my network. Now, if I'm looking at that point, it is easy for me to catch the attackers. It is easy for me to hunt the attackers. Okay. Now there are many methodologies where you can go ahead and look for the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Mitre is the framework which defines the TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now they keep upgrading it. I think they have model 10 now. Yeah, version 10 at this point of time. The latest one. It keeps upgrading very often. Now, before that, right, I was talking about threat hunting maturity model. Now I have to start somewhere. Where do I start? Every organization will lie in this particular model which is set by Squirrel. There are other models, maturity models as well. It basically says how mature your organization is in terms of looking for threats. Okay. Now when you are at the initial stages where you are looking for automated alerting, let's say you have configured certain alerts to look for bad hashes or connections to bad IP addresses, you are at low level. If that changes, you're gone, right? The threat hunting program is scrapped. Next, we have minimal level. Okay, you are like putting in slight effort. You're not putting in more amount of energy in order to hunt the threats in your environment. You're using paid sources to look for certain IOCs in your environment. You're like minimal threat hunting. Now when you come into the procedural level, right, you're collecting data, you're analyzing data, you're creating maps, and you're looking for example, let's say in past 100 days, what is the frequency of login failures, what is the frequency of people logging in from non-business countries, what is the frequency of people logging in out of order, right? So you collect all the data and you do analysis. You are in level 2, okay, like slowly increasing, going up the ladder. Next, you have innovative. So what you do is you as a threat hunter sit down, do manual analysis, try connect the dots. You put in mental energy instead of incorporating too much of automated methodologies. Instead of incorporating or machine learning, UABA or any other tools, the analyst sits and tries mapping based on the history he has collected, based on all the data he has. Now you are coming up with new ways the attacker could target your organization or anybody in the industry. Now next, when you have created new use cases, when you have came up with new perspectives of hunting a threat, or you have found out new ways of catching threats, then you go ahead and spread it out to people and you say, was these are the methodologies, if you use, you will be successful in hunting the threats in your organization or to your network, right? So that's where you are leading in the threat hunting model. You're not only monitoring the basic IOCs, you're not only just collecting based on the situation, you're actually going ahead and creating new use cases or new ways of hunting down for threats, and then you're spreading and using it in your organization as well. Okay, this comes in the leading part. If you're doing that, you're leading in the threat hunting scene. Now, how do I do threat hunting? Okay, I have all the data. Um, I know how to do. I know where to stand. I know the importance of looking for threat hunting. But where do I start? How do I start? Now, this concept of OODA loop. Okay, now OODA loop is not a cybersecurity term, but it's a strategic term which is incorporated by many organizations for many aspects. But this term actually was this term started I think in 1950s or something. Military a military I think he was a lieutenant during World War II. He came up with this concept called as OODA loop. Now when the fighter jets were fighting, they were fighting just randomly, and everybody many there was huge loss. At that point of time, he came up with this concept of OODA loop. Okay, now in this OODA loop, what would happen is the pilot in the fighter jet, what he would do is he would observe the target. Then what he would do is he would position himself towards the target, and then he would decide if I have to act on the target or not. After he decides, then he would act it. For example, let's say there is a threat on land, which the fighter jet is okay, there's a threat on land with which the fighter jet wants to shoot a missile at. This guy would observe, is this the right target for me? Now if the target is right, then what he would do is he would position the missile at that end, and then he decides, okay, is it the right time to shoot? If I shoot him at this point of time, will he be brought down? Okay, will my enemy be brought down? If yes, then let me act. Now this methodology, what happened was it started saving a lot of military personals of US Army, and it brought in a lot of effectiveness, and I don't know whatever war was going on. Right now, this concept of defense is incorporated in cybersecurity. What I will do is, I know there is a threat coming into my organization, but where is it coming from? I don't know. How do I know if there is a threat coming to my organization? I sit and observe my network. I check the logs. I check the data of my endpoint computers. I check the IDS alerts if there is any intrusion detection alert by my, let's say, snot. If I have a snot, is my snot giving any alert? Next is I check the network data. Are there any suspicious logins? Are there any out of order logins? Or are there any spike in the volume, is there any spike in the volume? Then I go ahead and check the historical data. What has been the history? Uh, is there any abnormality in my endpoints or networks, or is there any IDS trigger all of a sudden out of nowhere, too many IDS alerts? Okay, then I'll collect some data from threat intelligence as well. Okay, let's say we have paid services, or I have people who are doing threat intelligence. All this data we collect, and then investigation goals. Okay, I will say, okay, I want to look for these particular threats. Let's say I work in industrial control system in the industry. Okay, ICS. My organization uses ICS systems. What are the threats to ICS? What are the possible exploit exploits which can be executed in my network? Okay, I ask this question. Will there be any attacks on my PLC? Okay, yes. So I will have to look for PLC attack vectors. I collect all this data and do analysis. One second, guys. Now I collect all the data and try observing a pattern. Is there any repeated attack vector? Is there any point where endpoints are compromised? Okay, now I will go ahead and let's say my endpoint is compromised. Let's say there is one computer in the organization which which is compromised with virus or ransomware. Okay, now I find it out. Now what do? Do I keep that in the network, or do I remove it from the network? Okay, that's where I'm orienting what action, what should be done. Should that computer be in the network or out of the network? Okay, and then once I have collected all the data and I know these are the threats, these are the possible threats, then I go ahead and decide what to do with these threats. Now not every threat is worthy of treating. Okay, now let's say there is a printer in my organization. There is a printer in my organization which has 0-day vulnerability, and which is not connected to the network. There is only one computer and only one network, one printer connected to that network. People have to manually log in and then print the files. Okay, if there is a 0-day vulnerability in that particular printer, it is not a threat. That it is not a threat to my organization. The threat is to the printer. In this case, if I figure out using OODA loop, if I figure out that there is a problem in the printer, there is a 0-day vulnerability, I will say, okay, fine, no problem, I will not uh, act on it. If someone is trying to exploit it, anyhow it is outside the environment, I'm not going to care much about it. Okay, this is where I decide. Okay, in our case, in our example, I decide not to act on it, right? Then I keep doing this until and unless I see there is no threat. But again, I do it. You will keep on finding threats again and again when you keep repeating this OODA loop. Now Mahesh says, how can we integrate with Lockheed Martin cyberkill chain? Now cyberkill chain is a methodology of, I would say, cyberkill chain you can use at the observe stage, not at the orient and decide. Now cyberkill chain methodology says how do attackers act. Okay, in threat hunting what we are doing is we are trying to look how do we defend ourselves from the activities attackers do. You can incorporate cyber kill chain at the observe stage in of this OODA loop. Okay, now moving ahead, we have a couple of frameworks which will help us understand where do we look for threats and how do we look for a Mitre attack. As Amar indicated earlier, Mitre attack framework is the amazing framework which has been built by Mitre, the corporation which is owned by US government, the research corporation. Now this says what are the tactics, techniques and procedures, what are the tactics, techniques and procedures incorporated by attackers in order to exploit the environments. Now the Mitre attack has the Mitre attack framework has listed attack vectors based on operating systems, based on softwares, based on perimeter or endpoint devices, and all these things. Now, I'll just give you a quick overview of what exactly the category is so that I could. Okay, this is a simple example of how exactly the Mitre's attack framework is laid out. Okay, now this huge framework, but this is how it is. Okay, okay, maybe it's not much visible to you guys. Probably now it is. I have created a mind map which will help you understand how the entire framework is laid out. If you see right now, the framework is laid out based on the operating systems, the tools. For example, if you see here right now, what are the threats to an enterprise? What are the threats to Mac OS? What are the threats to Windows and Linux and on for the cloud infrastructure for network? What are the threats to mobile environment, industrial control systems, and the softwares which are maliciously used? All these things. Okay, and I think the enterprise matrix per se has 177 techniques, attack vectors, I would say, and which also has 348 sub techniques for enterprise. For mobile, they have many. Now this is the attack matrix. Now Mitre came up with something called as defend, which is the matrix which says how do you defend your organization. Now in threat hunting, what we should be doing is we should be looking towards how the attacker could compromise my network, and then using the Mitre attack framework in our case, and then we should be defending using the Mitre defend framework is what I believe. Okay, now we when we do threat hunting using the attack framework, right, the probability of we finding threats increases because Mitre attack framework has laid out amazing possible threat possibilities. Okay, and Sophos has a framework for hunting down vulnerability, hunting down the threats in the network. Group IB is a company which has their own hunting framework. Now all these, right, somehow I believe that all these frameworks somehow come back and connect to Mitre attack. Okay, I have to do hunting, but I work in food FMCG. I don't think I should care about it. No, no, you every organization which uses a computer should need threat hunting. Every organization, because if you for example, let's say the people who think that I'm not vulnerable, right, they are the most vulnerable one. Now I was listening to a podcast recently and they were talking about this incident where I think a small band from Middletown, Ohio, these people during the pandemic they hosted an online event. They said these are the tickets to our online event, and uh, there were 100 or 150 attendees were expected to join to their rock band show. At the point where the show was about to start, the website went down. Nobody knows these people. 100 or 150 or audience were expected. All of a sudden, right at the moment of the show online show, the entire website crashed, the entire website went down because later when they did the investigation they found out that there was a DDoS on the network, a targeted DDoS, not a random DDoS, targeted DDoS. Now, if a band of six people can be attacked, don't you think if you work in TCS or if you work in any company for that matter, do you think there is no chance of you being attacked? There is high chance, right? So that's where every industry has this requirement of threat hunting. Individual in cybersecurity from every industry has to do threat hunting. uh, Communications, IT, nuclear reactors, for example, the Stuxnet, right? In the defense and aviation, how many people know here that one of the Indian airline stopped their services because there was an attack on the systems? if there was a person in the SpiceJet organization who told that we don't need threat hunting program, we don't need cybersecurity program. So that's how it is. Every industry we have amazing. I mean, like, I wouldn't say amazing, but yeah, we have live examples. Uh, when WannaCry hit, National Health Services Organization of UK was down. A lot of many lives were lost. Right. So that's how every industry needs this. Cybersecurity program, and threat intelligence or threat hunting is one. Okay, I want to do threat hunting. Where do I start? Okay, I know where to start. How do I do it? And if I have to do it, I don't want to do it manually. What tools do I use? Which tools will help me have a clear picture of the threats to my organization? How do I map them? How do I look for them? Okay. Now, the most popular tool is a sim tool. Everybody knows a sim tool, and if you know a sim tool, you know the importance of threat hunting, right? Because a sim tool is a place. Now if I go back to the OODA loop, right, where the observe part comes in, this is where you implement a sim tool in our in the OODA loop. So what happens is the OODA loop puts in everything, and it helps you observe. For example, if you are used to working logarithm, right? Logarithm has this amazing capability of drilling down and looking things at a lot, like extremely raw level. I know RSA, Splunk, everybody does it, but I must say logarithm is an amazing tool. Okay, Arcsite, yeah, even Arcsite gives you the log level view. The best part about sim tools is they give you a pictorial representation of your logs, raw logs, right? Yeah. Splunk, Phantom, SOAR technologies. We have many technologies, and any threat intelligence platforms. You know, we have something called as Zero Fox. We have Recorded Future, Acute Acunetics, and many more. Expose Mandiant. Mandiant gives intelligence, threat intelligence to you guys. Talus is one. Virus Total, right? So these platforms, when you use them, right, you know what threat to look for. These guys put in extreme amount of efforts. Now again, going back to the OODA loop, the OODA loop says you that you collect data from intelligence platforms. Now, Maltigo and Cuckoo Sandbox are, for example, if there is a malware malware found on the net in my network, what I would do is I would take a sample of it, or I would image the system and analyze in the sandbox to understand what type of a threat it is, what exactly it is doing. I try to drill down to a point uh, where the point of trigger of malware is found, right? Maltigo is the one for doing analysis, OSINT analysis. In intelligence driven, Yara rules are the rules which are used to look for patterns. For example, hash pattern or file extension pattern. Situational awareness driven. So for example, I'm looking for certain campaigns in my organization. How do I map them, right? So that's where your artificial intelligence engine, I think Logarithm has AI engine. What it does is it it monitors a certain activity for a duration of time in the backend, and it tells you that these are the uh, possible threats. Now from there you start drilling down and start hunting if these threats are actually bad or not. Okay. These are the couple of tools. And okay, yeah, as I said, the guys who are SOC analyst, cybersecurity analyst, TI analyst, threat hunting analyst, are the ones who do threat hunting. If you're among these, you should be doing threat hunting as well. Do we have any virtualized platform where we get all sim and SOAR? Okay, yeah, now I interpret. Yeah, we do have from Logarithm. Logarithm is a combination of sim and SOAR. Yes, Sentinel is one as such. Now, how do I do it? How do I uh, do threat hunting? Where do I start, and what things should I know? Right, the most important capability according to me is, in order to understand the data, in order to understand why there is a raise, why there is this spike. Okay, why there is a login pattern. You should be able to see the pattern. The day you crack this code of understanding the patterns in cybersecurity, trust me, you will skyrocket, right? And you have, you know, everything and anything and everything in what is happening. You have found the threat. You have you know how the threat is working, what exactly is it doing, but you are unable to communicate to your super boss, or you are unable to communicate to a team which will go ahead and you know, stop the threat or mitigate threat. If you do not have that capability, even after knowing everything, you won't be delivering value. And yeah, data forensics capabilities is required. For example, if you are able to understand that there is a pattern in connection to certain IP addresses, right? Certain files are being used again and again, certain DLLs are being called again and again, right? You will be able to understand a threat better. Of all this, if we do not understand how the system is working, what log says what, if we are unable to understand what log says what, and what are the different types of logs, how do I interpret logs, then it will be difficult for you. Now when you start I would say you have to start from understanding the logs and the forensics part. Communication obviously comes in alongside. When you know the logs, right, that's where you will be able to analyze the pattern, that's where you will be able to connect the dots. Okay, so if you work on these things, it will be easy for you to start the threat hunting journey or threat hunting program. Okay, yeah,